Yes, sir. Yes.
So thank you, Chairpersons. Thank you, Rutul. Thank you, whole team of Diabetes India. It's a very great moment that in the absence of our beloved Sadikut sir, who have continued the show. And I must thank Dr. Banshi, my good friend, Dr. Arvind, our guide, and the whole team, Anup Shar and the Amit, and the whole team for continuing the rapport. And I'm very proud to be part of Diabetes India. I have been assigned the topic NAFLD and diabetes underestimated risk. And this, all of you know very well that this is a field where we are not very conscious. So at the end, I'll give you what really we need to practice and how we should go about. So to define few things, there are terms like NAFLD, NAFL, NASH, and then there are situations, related definitions like NASH and cirrhosis, cryptogenic cirrhosis, and the NAFLD activity score, which all of you are acquainted with, all gastroenterologists, the endocrinologists, diabetologists, metabolic physician present in the gathering. And my most important saying that if you come across a patient of diabetes, like you screen for microvascular complications, you screen for macrovascular complications, also screen them for important complications like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So liver disease is an important cause of death in type 2 diabetes, which many of you have not realized by now. I'm telling how. There is a 2.5-fold risk of death from CLD, which was observed in a cohort study with more than 7,100 patients of type 2 diabetes. And recently, a last study of more than 1 million subjects have confirmed that one of the important cause is NAFLD. 96% patients with cirrhosis have glucose intolerance, and 30% may be clinically diabetic out of them. Virtually the entire spectrum of liver disease is seen in patients with type 2 diabetes, namely the steatohepatitis, the cirrhosis of liver, and also the fatty liver. Liver disease occurring as a consequence of diabetes because of glycogen deposition, the steatosis and the non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, fibrosis and cirrhosis, biliary disease, cholelithiasis, cholecystitis, and complications of therapy of diabetes like cholestatic and necroinflammatory complications. And you know very well, it's a abnormality of glucose homeostasis occurring in a complication of liver disease, including hepatitis, cirrhosis, hepatocellular carcinoma, fulminant hepatic failure, and post orthotic liver transplantation has resulted. And liver disease occurring coincidentally with diabetes mellitus and abnormalities of glucose homeostasis results in hemochromatosis, glycogen storage disease, and autoimmune biliary disease, which is an extension of the same problem. I am showing you some evidence that the cumulative risk of chronic non-alcoholic liver disease, including cirrhosis, shows very clearly that this NAFLD was significantly higher in patients of diabetes. You can see in this graph, diabetes have a very higher score. So also the cumulative risk of hepatocellular carcinoma, which is much significantly higher in patients of diabetes than non-diabetes. This tells us very clearly that we have to be very cautious about such complications. And here, an interesting finding, the incidence of cardiovascular disease in patients with NAFLD in selected longitudinal studies shows the CVD is the most common cause of death in most of the patients of NAFLD, cirrhosis, and end-stage liver disease. And you can see almost 1/3 of the patient die of the related cause. So CVD causes are a very common association of NAFLD. So finally, it is linked all complications. Let us learn little about pathophysiology. The major risk factor, like truncal obesity, which are commonly type 2 diabetics we see, and insulin resistance is there, and hypertriglyceridemia and metabolic syndrome are accompanied, which results both in NAFLD as well as in diabetes. And the conditions like hypothyroidism, obstructive sleep apnea, hypopituitarism, hypogonadism, pancreaticoduodenal resection, and polycystic ovary syndrome has in common both the conditions NAFLD and diabetes. And to reiterate, I'll tell it's a underestimated risk now. So diabetes is a risk factor for NAFLD and hepatocellular carcinoma. It comprises a series of liver disorders like steatosis to steatohepatitis, fibrosis, and cirrhosis. And it has been observed that the fatty liver, obesity, and insulin resistance act as cofactors to cause liver damage. You see here, the diabetes, obesity, and hyperlipidemia simultaneously contribute to NAFLD, which leads to cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. So if you tell your patients that the simple fatty liver can lead to carcinoma and you have a malignant risk and dying from that, many will not believe. Even physicians disagree on this point. We have to realize that this is a potential risk. And all these factors, increased free fatty acid leading to adipose tissue and adiponectin, the leptin and TNF alpha leading to oxidative stress, the hyperinsulinemia leading to increased free fatty acid, and the type 2 diabetes and hyperglycemia leading to hyperinsulinemia ultimately causes inflammation, necrosis, and fibrosis. This is regarding pathophysiology. And one thing I'll tell here, the screening in primary care diabetes center and obesity clinics is recommended. Adults attending these clinics should be screened to get worked out for NAFLD, and managing them in the right time with exercise, drugs, weight management will be rewarding in later in the prevention of the disease. Let us see the diagnosis. It requires this approach to diagnose NAFLD. You have to see if there is a hepatic steatosis by imaging or by histology. Many don't agree for histology, so imaging is a very convenient way. No significant alcohol consumption that you have to rule out. No competing etiology for hepatic steatosis that you have to rule out, and no coexisting causes of chronic liver disease. The biochemistry, you know, the AST, ALT, and other enzymes will do, and they rarely exceeds 4 to 5 times. Usually the ALT is more than AST in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and AST becomes higher when there is advanced fibrosis. The fibrosis score is taken, and you have to employ 6 easily available variables like age, hypoglycemia, body mass index, platelet count, albumin, and the AST-ALT ratio. And then it's most important to get a NAFLD fibrosis score. So less than 1.4 at 90% sensitivity and 60% specificity to exclude advanced fibrosis, and greater than 0.6 had 67% sensitivity, 97% specificity to identify presence of the fibrosis, which ultimately is correlated to the dysregulation, hypoglycemia, uncontrolled NAFLD, steatohepatitis, and chronic liver disease. If you see the CK18, the hepatocyte apoptosis plays an important role in the pathogenesis of NASH. It leads to increased serum cytokeratin 18. And in imaging, all are included: the abdominal ultrasound, the non-contrast abdominal CT, the contrast-enhanced CT, abdominal MRI, and the transient elastography is an ultrasound-based non-invasive method of assessing fibrosis through measurement of liver stiffness. And you know about the FibroScan, which we have already talked about. The biopsy, which is the gold standard for characterizing the NAFLD, though expensive and carries risk of morbidity, very rarely mortality, assessing the degree of inflammation and shell injury, and to stage for the degree of fibrosis. You can see some pictures where the vacuoles are seen, a loss of hepatic architecture is seen, and also seen the fatty vacuoles are disseminated throughout the liver tissue, and a lot of lymphocyte infiltration. So this picture specifically tells us about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in patients who will you go for a biopsy safely, and that is the final gold standard of detecting NAFLD in a patient of type 2 diabetes. We come to management. treatment of the patients with type 2 diabetes and the liver disease, there are two aspects I'll be covering. One is management of diabetes in patients with concomitant liver disease. One is management of liver disease in patients with concomitant diabetes. Because this is a comorbidity, so when diabetes and NAFLD is there, both contribute to the another. The NAFLD contributes to diabetes and diabetes contributes to NAFLD. And in the management, also you have to be careful when the duo is approached. First, the liver disease in diabetes. The weight reduction surgery is very important. There occurs significant improvement in steatosis and ballooning in 1 and 5 years following bariatric surgery compared to baseline. And multiple benefits are seen and recommended in patients of morbid obesity to go for a weight reduction surgery. And weight loss generally reduces the steatosis, achieves the hypocaloric diet alone or in conjunction with the increased physical activity. So that is a very rewarding experience. And I'm not going to the details of the surgery, which is beyond the scope of this presentation. Along with that, the vitamin E can be taken for the antioxidant property, which is another option because we have very nominal players for intervening NAFLD associated with the diabetes. Here, this PBNS trial shows the outcome and changes in histologic features of liver after 96 weeks of treatment with vitamin E and pioglitazone. We can see significant improvement in NAFLD, and I'll recommend both the drugs in these patients of type 2 diabetes associated NAFLD. So this also tells you about the alpha tocopherol administration, the daily dose of 800 international units, which improves the liver histology, and that can be taken as a evidence, and we can practice in our patients who have this problem. Let us see about insulin sensitizing agents. The insulin resistance is believed to play an important role in the pathogenesis of NAFLD, and in many trials have shown that intervening this insulin resistance is rewarding in management of these patients of type 2 diabetes with NAFLD. And metformin has no significant effect on the liver histology and not recommended as a specific treatment for the liver disease. So this is one of the conditions. We know our good friend metformin is always there for us, but here with an advanced liver disease or an advanced NAFLD, when we use metformin, it can deteriorate the situation, deteriorate the NAFLD, though it may help our insulin resistance. So here, the pioglitazone is rather beneficial than the azole metformin. And statins and omega-3 fatty acids and also deoxycholic acids, the dyslipidemia is almost universal in these patients. So the histological endpoints that have examined the use of statins in the treatment of NASH, specifically to treat NASH, cannot be advocated at this point of time. If the patient has associated dyslipidemia, we give statins, but per se in NAFLD, we don't have much evidence. And the demonstrated improvement in liver test with an increase in liver-related adverse effects compared with the controls are seen, especially in the patients who have been used with the statins, omega-3 fatty acids, and also deoxycholic acids. So this double-blind trial shows borderline improvement. So some studies have shows the efficacy of UDCA in these situations, though they are not very promising. So we have studies which clearly not recommend the UDCA for this purpose, which is published in the hepatology, like what I'm showing you now. It's premature to recommend the omega-3 fatty acid as well, but as a supportive drug, people have taken that and considered as the first line agent to treat hypertriglyceridemia in the patient with NAFLD. So if the patient has an associated hypertriglyceridemia, we can add the omega-3 fatty acid. If the patient has associated dyslipidemia, we can add a statin, and of course, UDCA has some controversial role. The lack of evidence to show that the patient have an increased risk of serious drug-induced liver injury from statins, the RCTs, they recommend the use if there is associated dyslipidemia. Alcohol use in these patients. It should not consume heavy amount of alcohol, and it's not recommended can be made with regards to non-heavy consumption of alcohol as well. Though they are not habitually alcoholics, and liver damage is not classical of alcoholic liver disease. In general, they are advised not to take because they have already a liver pathology existing. The miscellaneous recommendations, they tell the screening for the HCC, and they don't support a routine repeating of the liver biopsy in the patient of NAFLD or NASH. So going for a biopsy regularly is not recommended, but you can go for endoscopy to see the evidence of esophageal varices. I have already told that the first line therapy with metformin is not recommended in advanced hepatic disease, but it has not been reported to cause hepatotoxicity and has shown some benefit in patients of NAFLD as well. So in the early stage, you can think of giving metformin, but patient with significant NAFLD, steatohepatitis, and in the SCC, you have to avoid this drug, and preferable drug is insulin. This is regarding management of diabetes in patients of concomitant liver disease. Let us discuss the drugs which help us for the management of diabetes and also NAFLD, and then they have role in decreasing NAFLD. The sulfonylureas, our old friend, in the management of diabetes with concomitant liver disease, are safe. May not overcome the insulin resistance. They don't work on that. The defects in the insulin secretions in patients with coexistent alcohol liver disease and pancreatic damage, and then with a short half-life, sort of like glipizide and glyburide are preferred in this condition than glimepiride. So glipizide and glyburide we prefer, which have a short half-life and that usually don't cause hypoglycemia. With decompensated cirrhosis, they have a reduced ability to counteract the hypoglycemia, and thus the response to the therapy should be monitored. And the chlorpropamide was associated with hepatitis and jaundice, that all of you know why this drug was banned. Here, the alpha glucosidase inhibitors are particularly useful in patients with liver disease because they frequently cause mild transient elevation of ALT. Rare occasion, the severe liver disease, but is shown to be effective in encephalopathy as well as in cirrhosis. Miglytol has not been associated with hepatotoxicity. The glycemic control improves significantly in both fasting and postprandial state because of the low glycemic load and low A1C, and type 2 diabetes treated with insulin along with alpha glucosidase inhibitor. The similar effects in the patients with hepatic encephalopathy, also a reduction in the blood ammonia level, which paralleled and increased bowel movement frequently. Glitazones I have already told, especially useful because of the enhanced insulin sensitivity. They are sensitizers and they work on underlying defect of NAFLD. Concerned about their potential hepatotoxicity due to experience with the troglitazone, but no difference in the incidence of liver abnormality has been reported with pioglitazone, and they're not to be initiated if there is evidence of active liver disease or if the serum ALT is more than 2.5 times high. Insulin is the final answer, and frequently it is required, and when there is a significant CLD, we insist the patient to go for insulin because they work in many ways. They're anti-inflammatory, they improve the NAFLD, they improve the A1C, and then it can be very well correlated with the improvement of the both associated conditions. And with decompensated liver disease, the requirement may be decreased due to the capacity of gluconeogenesis and reduced hepatic breakdown of insulin, that you have to know, or else will end in hypoglycemia. And the patients with impaired hepatic function may have an increased need for insulin due to insulin resistance. Finally, in patients with hepatic encephalopathy who require high carbohydrate diets resulting in postprandial hyperglycemia, rapid acting insulin analogs like Lispro, Aspart, and Glulysin may be particularly useful, and they help us in controlling diabetes very well. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I have covered the topic, the NAFLD and diabetes, the underestimated risk. Many times we forget to screen NAFLD in a diabetic patient, and the most importantly, the complications like steatohepatitis and also hepatocellular carcinoma has to be kept in mind, and we have to be sure that the metabolism which is common to diabetes and the liver, the gluconeogenesis and the glycogen storage shares the complication, and we have to be very careful while dealing a patient for detecting, intervening, and successfully managing both cases in a patient. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the opportunity.